Few tales are told of Hades, whose very name inspires fear and penitence, reminding us of the inevitable fate which we all share. I, however, mean to tell you such a tale. Listen carefully.
Hades is a title developed by the fabled indie studio called Supergiant Games. They've produced many upstanding titles in the past, such as Bastion, Transistor and Pyre. What makes the developer unique is the immense amount of detail put into everything in their games. Sound design is probably the best that I've ever witnessed, not to mention pristine dialogue and narrative work. And I'm saying that without even fanboying a bit. It's just a fact. Hades is an ongoing project since it's still in early access. Worry not, it's almost finished, and the 1.0 launch should be happening during this year. The game is based on Greek mythology. You'll be traversing in the underworld that is ruled over by no other than Hades himself. The main protagonist, Zacharias, is Hades' son that wants to escape his father's kingdom with one way or another. On your way to look for an exit, you will face against multiple different types of monsters, ghosts and skeletons that are familiar from fables and stories. The gods that rule over Olympus will help you on your quest by lending you their aid in the form of boons. Sometimes, however, they might attack you if you show too much affection to another god. So, what is Hades exactly? Well, it's a roguelite dungeon crawler with a story. Wait, story you say? Yup. It has tens of thousands of spoken dialogue lines in it, and procedurally generated levels with variation from enemy types to even bosses. It is a short run, however, but not an easy one. The length of the game will be expanded upon with the final release, but right now you got 4 different dungeon levels to explore and play through to your heart's content. I played the game for over 15 hours before beating the last boss for the first time, and I was buffed up to my teeth. So yeah, it's a challenging game. There is an option to make the game even harder from the beginning, if you feel like you're up for the challenge. The combat in the game feels smooth and almost flawless, and I'm not saying that lightly. I'll explain the basics by using the first weapon, Stygia's sword, as an example. You have your basic slashing attack with mouse 1, but if you chain that attack 3 times, the last attack will be a thrusting attack that can knock back enemies. If you knock back someone against a wall or a trap, they will take extra damage. With your Q, you'll pull out a special move that deals AoE damage. Pressing M1 while dashing with the spacebar, you'll pull off a dashing thrust attack. On top of all that, you'll be able to use your cast ability for range damage with M2. One of your abilities is still locked when you enter a new run, but grabbing a call boon from one of the gods will let you use their power as your own. After you've filled up an adrenaline gauge by dealing damage, or sometimes by taking damage, you can press F to unleash the power of the gods upon your enemies. All of these abilities can be modified to something entirely different by earning favors from the gods in the afterworld, and that's how you'll start making your build for your run. Sometimes the enemies will shoot projectiles at you, and there's even multiple ways to deal with that too. You can dodge them by running, or dashing, or simply attack the projectiles to make them go poof. Also, if you're lucky enough, you might be able to get a boon that lets you deflect those projectiles back at the enemy, which is insanely satisfying to pull off. There's a whole bunch of different status effects and variables that may work with you or against you in the game, but I won't be listing all of them for the sake of time. When you clear a chamber of enemies, you will be rewarded. When the reward is a message from Olympus, the gods offer you 3 different options from one of their boons, which also might have different levels of rarity to them, the rare being an improved version of a similar ability. Also, when you're done picking up the reward from the cleared chamber, you might be able to choose which way you want to progress, to go after gold or to enter Charon the Boatman's shop, for example. Each dungeon level ends with a boss fight, which, like mentioned before, come with variety, so they rarely feel like the same. Some bosses might learn new attacks or summon help. Sometimes they might even be a different boss altogether. The boss fights feel really well balanced, but the latter part of the game really ramps up in difficulty with the amount of damage they're able to dish out and withstand. So if you're not careful, you will get blundered really fast. Everything besides golden boons carry over from run to run, so every time you try to escape, you will gain some sort of resources to spend back in your cozy prison called home. You can also unlock new weapons like Kornak through Heart-Seeking Bow by spending keys that you found on your last run. There are 6 weapons in total in the game right now, and many different trinkets that will change the way how you play the game from the get-go. There's also a skill tree kind of system, where the game lets you spend resources called Darkness to improve your chances. In best case scenario, you might be able to purchase an ability that brings you back from the dead once, not to mention 3 times if you're rich enough. By beating bosses, you'll be able to gain and spend Titan's Blood to modify your favorite weapon after practicing enough with it. Some of the resources like gemstones and diamonds let you unlock new areas and encounters in your dungeon, which sometimes contain new NPCs that might help you on your travels. And believe me when I say, you'll need all the help that you can get. Dying in the game never felt like a bad thing, because I knew I would get to experience something fresh every time, even after those 15 and now over 20 hours I spent in the game. Every time you get revived in Hades' palace, you will be greeted with new dialogue. The characters in the palace will always have something new, and most of the time even interesting, to say, occasionally engaging in conversation with each other. I don't think I've ever played a roguelite game that would have this amount of depth in storytelling ever before. As per usual for Supergiant Games, the narrative and dialogue are pristine, not to mention the godly soundtrack. Once I met a specific NPC for the first time and entered their lair, I couldn't but just stop and listen to the song they were singing.
Greetings, Father. My ransacking was a delight, thank you for asking. So I'll just be on my way again.
Be on your way indeed. What do I care? You shall never reach the surface. Go, see for yourself.
Graphics are unique, self-drawn and beautiful. The amount of work that was put into the details everywhere is just mind-numbing. Nothing ever seems out of place, and every level in the dungeon seems different from one another. Yet they're all very clear and work well as telegraphs to the player, even in the midst of battle. You couldn't really tell the game was in early access, since I found almost no flaws in the game in the whole time I was playing it. There were a couple of occasions where some of the monsters would get stuck in a corner or a platform, or I would get hit by an attack that clearly wasn't close enough to me. Other than that, barely anything really struck as unfinished work. Some balancing might be necessary for a couple of the weapons, and maybe even the boons, because it's pretty clear some of the weapons perform way better than the others. It might be just because of my own playstyle too, so take that one with a grain of salt. After you beat the final boss for the first time, your gameplay becomes a bit different. You'll be able to put on some bounties and heat on yourself to make the game extra hard. What you gain in compensation are extra rewards, since you gain better rewards from the bosses only once with each weapon you use on them. You could also start a whole new playthrough without any of your previously gained progression in Hell mode that puts on these heat modifiers on you from the beginning. It is overall a very challenging but satisfying game. Hades is available for purchase on Steam for 21 euros, but like I said, it's still in early access. However, I'm sure you'll get a bunch of hours from it even in its current state, so I would say it's worth the price tag, for sure. I'll be uploading one of my successful shield runs in the game to my YouTube channel if you're interested in taking a closer look how it looks like to have a full run in Hades. But it's totally going to be spoiler full, so take care, I guess. Thank you for watching, my name is NordiMonki, and have a great day. Nordi out. See ya.